Kevin Rodriguez. I am the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Office of the Governor and the Chairman of the Economic Development Authority, and father of 3 amazing, intelligent daughters. I bring you greetings and support from the United States Virgin Islands delegation, America's Paradise. I was first introduced to the Global Summit of Women when I traveled with my fiancée, that beautiful lady. Where is she? Oh, she's right there. When I traveled with my fiancée to Portugal, and this experience changed me as a man wanting to do more. When I brought my experience back to the United States Virgin Islands, I was asked, how can the USVI participate in the Global Summit of Women advancing this economic forum? I would like to introduce the Virgin Islands delegation, who is a proud sponsor along with the Division of Tourism for the second year breakfast. Our first person I'd like to introduce, our First Lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Ms. Yolanda Bryan. And the CEO of Economic Development, Mr. Wayne Biggs. The Virgin Islands delegation is here to celebrate diversity, equity, and parity of women on a global basis. Our pledge and commitment to the Global Summit of Women is one of utmost importance to Governor Bryan, as we know that young women, young, strong women make a strong world. I invite you to visit the U.S. Virgin Islands booth. We're located on the left-hand side as you go out. And so we have Made in the Virgin Islands item, and we also would like for you to present your business card. Tomorrow, after the session, we will be giving gifts. So put your business card in the basket, and you'll receive a gift. And so it is important that we support this event. When I met Miss Navidad, who is an amazing woman, she's like a mother now. I feel like, she's an amazing woman and very powerful. I was so impressed, and I told her, we're gonna make this an annual event for the Virgin Islands to support the breakfast. So, Miss Navidad, I'm just proud to say that I'm proud that I'm here as a male representing this major initiative.
Thank you.
And I would like to present to you, these are gifts made in the VI to you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Thank you. And of course, we will all go to the Virgin Islands, right? Okay. Okay, now I would like to call upon Lynn Lewis-Smith, who is the CEO of Business Event Sydney, to get us going on the very first incredible panel that I know you will enjoy hearing from. Please give Lynn a warm welcome.
I can hear the Aussies out there. Good morning, everyone. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here in Dubai with you today and to moderate this fantastic panel and this session on global and regional megatrends. As I do my intro, I will ask the panellists to come up and sit if they wouldn't mind, and then we can get underway after my introduction. Thank you. I want to start by saying how excited I am to be here. I'm Lynn Lewis-Smith, I'm the CEO of B Sydney, and I lead a global team of bidding specialists who secure international business events of strategic economic and social impact, not only for Australia, but for global communities. And the organisation works across a number of industries, science, technology, infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, health, and education. And I personally put a great focus on women in leadership and a huge advocate. And in 2018, I co-chaired the Global Summit of Women in Sydney. And it was a career highlight for me. And I take my hat off to all of those destinations and those committees that have delivered this event with Irene and her team. What it does do is it brings the subject matter experts into your destination to discuss and debate the big issues that we face as women around the world and work towards social and economic prosperity. So I do encourage you to, as destinations, host these types of meetings because it does raise the bar and move us forward. So needless to say, I love this event for so many reasons. One, to be surrounded with so many like-minded women and men, looking at solving some of the world's biggest issues as they relate to women. Now, my advice over the course of the next 2 days, and I say this with a decade of research under our belt with the University of Technology, Sydney, is to really lean into the solutions, the new learnings, the new knowledge, the tools, techniques, and the relationships that you'll engage with over the next couple of days. This summit is all about solutions, and so take those actionable insights back to your personal and professional life and drive the communities you engage with and drive change. And that's the true superpower of this event. If 950 women take something back to their community and that change, that is the superpower of this event. So the summit theme this year is Women Leading a New Climate of Change. This will be the frame for the summit and the discussions over the next couple of days. And to kick us off, we have a stellar panel. I've interacted with them leading up to the summit. Their presentations are amazing, and I'm sure you're going to be really curious and ask lots of questions. We have a couple of mics down the front here, and we will get to Q&A once we finish the presentations. The panel will cover global and regional. They'll take a look at the demographic, economic, climatic and social trends affecting markets worldwide. And so who we have with us today. On my far right is Sonia Vedovic. Sonia's the partner at McKinsey here in the Middle East and based in Dubai. We have Andre Duchevo. Is that good? Oh, Ali, sorry. Oh, they swapped on me. I had them in order. Sorry. So we have Ali Faramawi, who's the board director and former corporate vice president of Microsoft. Then we have Mani Thuru, the rock star of space. Mani's the head of aerospace and satellite solutions, Asia Pacific at Amazon Web Services. And then we have Andre. Andre is managing director, Arabian Peninsula and Pakistan Nielsen IQ. So we're going to kick off with Sonia. So let me just briefly introduce Sonia as she makes her way to the lectern for her presentation. She's a transformational digital business leader who specialises in building digital businesses. She combines more than 25 years of consumer and corporate banking experience with strategic implementation in digital banks, both before and since joining McKinsey, where she is currently a partner based in Dubai. Sonia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you very much, Irene. When Irene asked me to make a presentation regarding the regional and megatrends, I had a very long thought because there's so many of them, so it was very difficult for me to choose just a few, considering that I just have less than 10 minutes to present. But then I thought that I'm going to be a little bit sneaky, and I'm going to start with something that talks to the title and to the theme of this year's summit, which is Women Leading in the Climate of Change. So I will start with the climate change, okay? So everybody today is talking about the net zero transition. Not many people know what it actually is. And net zero transition is just the path that the world needs to take in order to curb or limit the increase of the temperature by less than 1.5% post-industrial era. And you can think it's a little bit small, right? 1.5 degrees is like nothing. But when we realize that water freezes at the temperature of 0 and it goes to +1, everything melts, we start realizing it's not that easy anymore, especially that we need to reverse hundreds and hundreds of years of the negative impact that we had on our climate and on our planet in the past. The problem that we are facing is that the commitments that are being made do not add up. And more importantly, the plans behind those commitments that are being made by the countries are not in place. And the problem is that in order for us to curb the temperature by 1.5 degrees, the action needs to be universal and needs to be significant. And what I mean by significant is that we need to spend $9.2 trillion every year until 2050 in order to achieve the effect. And as of today, we are short by about 1/3 of it. 3.5 trillion we are short of spending every year. And just to give you a little bit of an information how much it is, it's about 50% of all the corporate profits all around the world and 1/4 of all the tax that is being gathered and collected all over the world. By 2050, we would need to spend $275 trillion in order to impact the rise in the temperature. And what it means, it is 7 times the GDP and China combined on an annual basis. So think about that. It's a huge, huge money. And of course, it's not going to be spent equally, all over the world. The countries that are going to be affected the most are the emerging countries because they depend the most on fossil fuels. And therefore, their investments are going to be the biggest. The new offerings that are going to aid decarbonization are going to be huge. When you think about the electric cars, for example, there's about 5% of electric cars currently in the world. By 2050, we need to have 100% of all the cars being electric. So what it means is that a lot of the metals, a lot of the rare elements are going to be in big demand. There are going to be huge supply constraints that we are going to face, and also changes in prices. The acceleration of the physical climate risk is going to make us barely survivable in the environment and will allow us or will require us to wear the face mask most of the time. We are going to also see a lot of the labor disruptions. We are saying that about 185 million people are going to lose their jobs because of that displacement. But at the same time, there is going to be 200 million of new jobs being created. The problem is there is going to be a huge mismatch in the skill set between what those people are doing today and what is going to be required tomorrow. But if we don't act now, there is going to be a huge impact on our health. And the climate-related impact on our health is going to be the most important reason of the death rate going forward. By 2050, 1.1 million people per annum are going to go into premature death because of the climate change. And by 2050, if we don't act now, there is going to be about 60% of the global population that is going to have scarcity of water for at least 1 month a year. Think about that, 60% of the global population. So in order to curb that effect, that we are not talking on a daily basis. We hear about that in the media from time to time, but it's actually very serious. And that was the reason I wanted to bring it up to your attention. This is going to be a disaster, and it requires a lot of action, a significant action, a universal action, and requires an action now. At the same time, I wouldn't be myself, who always sees the glass half full, if I left you in this very gloomy mood. So what I wanted to say after that, maybe a little bit gloomy and sad introduction, I wanted to tell you that the world is actually not that bad at all. And there are certain signs that are telling me that we actually might do it, based on what I have seen happening in the world for the last 20 years. What you are seeing right now is an indication of our well-being, which plots two differentials on the scale. One is our average life cycle, and the other one is the GDP per capita. When you look at the world, in 2019, we were somewhere at 73 years of age, life expectancy, and about $17,000, $18,000 GDP per capita. That's the average for the world. But you know, as usual, when you do a big average view, it's not really showing you the true picture. So when I look at the continent and subcontinent, you see the whole thing is getting spread. Some countries are much better than that. Some of those are worse. When we look at the country view, it's becoming even more spread. We are going closer and closer to the real matter, and we see the world is not the same everywhere. So the average is not telling us the true picture. What McKinsey has done, we actually have divided the world into 40,000 sub-regions to see how the life expectancy and the well-being of the GDP capita looks like. And this is the picture. As you can see, it's very, very scattered. But what is the most interesting is about the change. What you see in this slide is the situation in the year 2000, where 1.1 billion people had a GDP per capita of less than $2.5 thousand, and their life expectancy was less than 65 years. And what has happened in the last 20 years, the bottom quadrant has become half of what it was in just 20 years. The people have increased their well-being and their life expectancy, and the top quadrant have increased the number of people living by 3 times. So what it means, if we really take the actions together, the well-being, the healthcare, a lot of the actions that have happened, we can actually make an enormous difference that we actually don't see and we don't talk on a daily basis. At the same time, first time in the history, we have women in all the parliaments in the world. And I was a little bit surprised to see Rwanda being the first country with over 60% of the women in their parliament. Followed by Cuba, Nicaragua, and our friends from Mexico that we have a huge representation on here in that forum. Not many people also know that girls these days spend more times at school than the boys. It's over 12 plus years. And the female literacy has raised to 83%. It's still less than the men, but it's 41% up. And also, as Irene said yesterday, we live longer. But what is more important, we also live longer in the emerging countries, in the low-income countries, which is very, very promising. And this is also a surprising statistic that I wanted to tell you. In 50% of the marriages in US, women earn at least as much or even more than the men. And in 16% of the cases, women are the only breadwinners in the household, which is an amazing statistic, and it's telling us we're actually getting there. Okay, I think. And now I'm going to talk to you about the regional trends. That's why I'm saying let's take a look closer to home. UAE has become my home about 3 years ago after I've lived in 5 different countries all around the world. And I'm not going to talk to you about the big transformation that this region is going to go from the fossil fuels dependency into being more dependent on renewable energy. I'm not going to talk to you how this region changes by hosting big, mega global events like the Expo 2020 in Dubai, or the World Championship in Qatar, or for that matter, the Global Summit of Women in the UAE. But what I'm going to talk to you about is how it changes its attitude to women. We heard a lot yesterday of how UAE is leading this space. I wanted to talk to you about the country today that we didn't talk about yesterday, and it's Saudi Arabia. And the reason I want to talk to you about Saudi Arabia, it's the 5th biggest country in the region with over 34 million people. And it's also the country that historically many people have seen as a country having big hurdles for the women progression. But the change is coming there. In the last 3 years, from less than 18%, we are currently 34% of women in the workspace. And the country is reaching 38 to 40% by the end of this year. And we are talking 3-year statistic. And at the same time, the unemployment of women has gone down from 32 to 21%. When I came to Saudi Arabia a year and a half ago to serve one of my clients, I was the only woman in the 2.2 thousand men in the bank. The client did not even have a women's toilet. I didn't know about that. I came with 5 women from McKinsey to a bank that did not have even one woman itself. You could imagine the shock of the men when they saw the delegation of 5 women in McKinsey, from McKinsey. From that time on, we started celebrating all the opportunities that we had to celebrate women, including the first time in history of that bank to celebrating the International Women's Day. But more importantly, what has changed, in a little bit more than a year, the client has hired 40 women in managerial positions in the bank. And in the floor that I am working with the client every week, there is 30% of women. There are a situation, it's a live picture, where it's really hard to find a man. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm on. Sonia, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. A bit gloomy on the transition to net zero, but we are in good hands because COP28 is being held here in Dubai, and it's led by a woman, Dr. Mariam. So we're in very good hands to make sure that women's economic participation is at the forefront and our considerations there. So now we're going to move to the next presentation. Andre, I will introduce you as you work up to the lectern. Yep.
You can use the mic, right? You can hear me.
Yeah, sure. Andre is responsible for developing and implementing Nielsen's business strategy. He's been the managing director for the Adriatic region in Nielsen's Media and Connect businesses based in Belgrade. He has 18 years leadership experience and knowledge of the market research industry and has led several leadership roles across multiple geographies. Over to you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And in some extent, it's unfortunate because I have to replace one of the colleagues which is, doesn't feel well. Civil couldn't come. Therefore, I have the chance to share a little bit with you about trends. And actually, I will talk about you because I'm sure that majority of you going for the shopping, buying different type of products in supermarkets, mini markets, groceries, and so on. Just a second, I don't know if my deck is here or not. What is that?
Yeah, do we have the technician for the
Do we
slides?
have it? Okay. Call repair. No, it's not coming. Is this right? No. Yeah, this is mine.
Bear with us.
No.
Do we have a technician in the house?
It was gone.
Andre,
Just keep going.
you don't need the slide, okay? Just in time. He'll get it at some point, but just...
Sure, no problem. It was actually one of my dreams to present and deliver content without the presentation. Finally, I've got it. Thank you. All right. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the FMCG and maybe just quick info about the company which I'm represented to. We're the company who is covering what consumer buy in the shops, how they buy, where they buy. And we're covering this one across 100 countries, providing the full view on that, on the consumer. Talking about FMCG in particular, all of you know from the different countries, we do experience at the consumer the price increase. And in particular, in our region, we have seen the price have been increased 2, 3, 4, 5 times in some categories, double-digit growth. Therefore, what we see across the board that constantly the price actually certain of influence on the consumer in some of extent. And we see that consumption is not growing. And we do anticipate that consumption would be flat or certain of in a decline in some of the categories for the next 12 months. And price will go up. Therefore, as all of us, we need to think about what kind of actions we can put in order to optimize the cost. And again, I will talk a little bit about women and the man consumer here. But overall, what we see the trend is that we're starting to cook more at home. We're starting to maybe even switch from one brand to another one. We're stopping to buy in some categories at all. And again, this is a tactics which not every single consumer taking, but some of them for sure going for that. Another tactic which we also observe in that consumers starting to go and seek more promo. And actually, this was a couple of years ago where, in particular in our region, but also in some of the Eastern and Western European markets, we observed that the promo pressure and actually sales which sold on promo went to so high, just for you to understand, around like 50-60% of sales in coffee category or in chocolate category was promotionally driven, meaning that mostly like every single week you can find the promo for one or certain of 2 brands within the category. And when the COVID came, we observed that a lot of the manufacturers, they certainly stopped promoting. And not only manufacturers, as well as the retailers. And a lot of the brands who have had this high level of the promo sales, they're starting to lose. They're starting to lose drastically their market share. But again, the current scenario, as I mentioned to you, that regular price for the brands, for the SKUs going up, plus there is less promo in the market. Therefore, it's bringing a huge boomerang effect, especially for those brands who had been promoted in the past and who is not providing certain of the benefits to the customer. Moreover, if you will look at a little bit deeper on where consumer going and buying the products. In the past, again, when I came to the region around 5 years ago, I was straight told that, okay, look, we are not going for the convenience. For us, shopping experience, going to the big mall, it's something which is like daily life. We spend the time during the weekend in those big malls and making the certain of shoppings in hypermarkets. But time changing. Right now, we see that the smaller formats of the stores, which is literally, if you look at the Europe, have been successful and still successful around 15, 20 years ago. Right now, we see that more and more those type of the formats of the shops starting to be on the rise. And the reason why, because we as the consumer, we wanted to find something which is the convenient. We maybe don't have a lot of the spare cash. Maybe we don't have money to fulfill the stocks as we did before. Therefore, for us, of course, occasional type of shopping which can feed certain of their needs, essential needs now, bringing the more benefits right now than time before. Another trend which I would like also to share with you, and we see that it's much more certain of often happening with the women consumer than with the man, it's about the e-commerce. If you look at the 2020 year, time of the COVID, of course, certain of did drive the e-commerce type of the shopping across many countries. And in particular, in that time, e-commerce started to grow, not just double-digit, triple-digit. And a lot of those thoughts was, okay, COVID will over and the e-commerce will bounce back. But the situation actually is not like that. We see that e-commerce growing across many categories, double-digit, still double-digit. 3 years ago, the share of e-commerce in the UAE market was around 1 to 2%. Right now, just for you to understand, it's a 5 to 7%. Some of the categories, if you're talking about chocolate, for example, once again, we see that this category growing much faster than in brick and mortar. And again, what we anticipate that this trend will continue in the future. And what we see that the women consumer, they are focusing more on the e-commerce because it's not just only about the convenience, but it's also about to get the best deal which you can find on the different platforms. And last but not least, if you're talking about the women consumer, we see that it's sort of more often than men, women consumers starting to refuse buying some or stop buying some categories, which is not sort of essential type of the categories. But once again, when you're saying this, people think that, okay, look, maybe because they don't have money, they're just trying to cut all of those expenses and so on, which they cure. But partially it's true. But from other side, when we see that when women consumer going and buying essentials, she's trying to find some benefits which this product can bring. I will bring you one of the category, which is bread. And if you can go and see how many varieties of the bread you can find right now in the shop and the price which you have to pay for some of the brands and some of the certain of subcategory of this bread, like which is providing organic benefits and so on, you will see that it's not something which we call essential means cheap. It's essential, but something which can bring the benefits, which can bring the health benefits to my family and to me personally. That's why this trend, again, right now in rise, and we do believe that trend as the e-commerce, a trend of products which can provide the health and wealth benefits will continue and will help a lot of the customers and consumers to find the right products in the shop. Last but not least, again, if we compare women consumer and man consumer with regard to if they sort of financially struggle because of the losing the job or like other sort of circumstances, what we find that the biggest bulk of the man and women consumer who didn't sort of faced any financial challenges, it's around 40%, 41% for women and around 37% for men. Those type of, or those part of the consumers, they are very constrained and trying to be a little bit of cautious when they buy the products. Once again, it doesn't mean that they have some financial obstacles to go and buy something, but they are cautious. And again, we see that a lot of the brands trying to win those type of the consumers by bringing, as I mentioned, some of the benefits, attributes, which can differentiate them amongst others and open up those group of the cautious type of the consumers to go and buy their products. And maybe a couple of the last thing which I would like to finish and share with you. If you talk about different sort of spans which women consumer and men consumer trying to do, and maybe like sort of some of those they want to cut, some of them they want to just to increase. Of course, across the board we see that women consumer and men consumer will increase the spends on the utilities, on the education and so on, and it's quite obvious. Sometimes you don't have sort of a lot of space to balance those, because if the price for the rent going up, yeah, you have to just sort of increase the spends for this part. But when we look at the portion where women consumer and men consumer will cut, we see that women consumer will cut more on the luxury clothes, more on electronics, more on out of home activities comparing to the men. This is actually quite interesting type of observation based on our research. And maybe last thing which I would like to finalize here, we see that during the last 3 years, every single year bringing the sort of new challenges for manufacturers, for retailers, for the market, and for all of us. But at the same time, what we see that the successful brands, they're trying to build up the story around attributes which is important for the consumer. And not just only about the price and going up, right? But also bringing some benefits, which can certainly be in a focus for either a women consumer, either for the man consumer. And successful brands and successful retailers, they are winning. Therefore, I wish you always to find your brand, to find your right strategy, to optimize and at the same time to earn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you for stepping in at short notice too for Seville.
Unfortunately,
well
I don't have slides, but
I can say one of the slides that you would have presented, interesting to note that the long-run GDP per capita would be 20% higher if gender employment gaps were closed. And I think that has a lot to do with consumer spending, and the differentiating priorities and decision-making between men and women are really interesting.
yes, and for sure, and this is what we see, and this is what I'm trying to say. I think in a sum of extent, if we have right proposition, if we have the right certain of assortment range, which is focusing not only on a certain of average consumer, but on the certain of women consumer, on the man consumer, on kids as well, we see that those type of the brands, they bring in much more benefits, as well as they are generating the sales. This is quite obvious. And I would say that niche is really huge. It's really big across not only GCC markets, but across the world.
Fantastic. Okay, we are getting up the next slides for Ali. While we do that, Sonia, I might just ask you a quick question. Sonia, can I ask you a quick question just while we're waiting for Ali to bring the slides up? In Australia, there's been a report on the climate load on women, and I'm just interested in your thoughts. They take the load of natural disaster, it's having an effect on their home life and the flow on into domestic violence, and then obviously leading to homelessness. What do you think needs to happen for, is it more women need to have a seat at the table to make the decisions, and more girls coming up through the STEM courses to be able to have those seats and make decisions, so that ceases?
Lynn, I'm not sure whether I understood the last part of the question.
Do more women need to have a seat at the table on climate change to make decisions on behalf of women? We're intended more empathetic most of the time to actually have those discussions at the board table.
Absolutely. As we have mentioned before, women are usually the most impacted by the natural disasters that we are experiencing as part of the climate change. And therefore, I think the empathy and the understanding of not just the effects, right, but how we can quickly not just prevent them, because it's a long-term thing, but also how do we react in the effects of those sudden disasters, and how do we make sure that we are prepared and take into consideration all those different elements is crucial, because it cannot be just one-sided view. And therefore, I'm very happy that here in the UAE, we've got a woman actually leading the COP, which is an amazing example.
Yeah, I think that's where change happens, definitely. Yep.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Well, if you want to hear expert presentations, you're going to have to keep quiet. These presenters work very hard to give you up-to-date information, and they have come here from different parts of the world. So please give them the respect of doing your private conversations outside. But in here, you're going to listen, okay?
Thank you, Irene. So, Ali, do we have your presentation?
I think so.
All right, let me quickly introduce. Ali's a technology executive, a board member, a strategic advisor, and a social entrepreneur. He was VP at Microsoft, leading the company's digital transformation partnership organisation, and is now focused on his independent board and advisory work around digital transformation, financial inclusion, and youth employment. And ladies, he is on the board of Valentino Spa, Italy, and Balmain in France. He is my new best friend. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you. Yeah, there is life after technology, I guess. And okay, here's a very, very quick spoiler alert. So I think throughout the history of humanity, women have had this unenviable task of anticipating, limiting, maybe fixing the damage that men tend to do. Only now you're going to have to take care of men and machine. I mean, that's the task ahead. That's what we're going to talk about. By the way, thank you very much. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here. This is my 6th or 7th Global Summit of Women, and I really appreciate that. I think the first event that I participated in was in Cairo, and I got to speak about my mother. The last one was in Basel, and I got to speak about artificial intelligence. Today I'm going to get to probably touch on both in different ways. So I was a technology executive for 35 years, last 25 years in Microsoft. I think it was Maslow who said, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So people like me in technology think that we have been given an incredible hammer and that everything in the world can be handled with technology or have some technology component into it. And I don't think we're entirely wrong, because I think from this crowd here, this incredible assembly of very, very smart and special people, there are a number of people who are experts in technology. There are a number of people who are experts in using technology, applying technology for their own business, world, culture, society. But then also everyone is a user, and maybe even more scary, everyone has an opinion. So it doesn't make this one very, very easy. So talking about global trends, I decided to try and tackle that from 4 different perspectives. Number one is basically like our eyes and ears, what we see and hear around us everywhere, in this country, in the region, in emerging markets, in developed markets, and so on. But then I thought also, we might as well bring ChatGPT into the picture. So I asked ChatGPT to, basically my question is, I have a speech in the Global Summit of Women on global trends in digital transformation. What should I talk about? I'll show you that. And I sent it to Irene, claiming it's mine. But anyway, that's it. But then I also want to maybe touch a little bit on a corporate perspective, like what the world is seeing and what some of the companies are doing, and maybe even what governments are doing. But most important in this whole thing is a leadership perspective. It's the role that you all have, regardless of positions or seniority in business, or what, the role that we all have in trying to navigate this new world of the truly, truly unknown. So if we look around, and I'll very, very quickly try and simplify that, and you see this everywhere. So there's obviously massive, massive advancement in digital infrastructure. I mean, actually, the word infrastructure in the past used to refer to sort of like roads and buildings and I don't know, ports and so on, but you cannot think of infrastructure now without thinking of the digital infrastructure. Devices everywhere, connected devices everywhere, sensors everywhere, data centers, I mean, everywhere. I mean, I was just chatting to Sonia about some intersections in our previous lives in countries like Poland and Malaysia and so on, where part of my role was to basically make the case for Microsoft to open up a data center in the country. For many, many people, it's a big thing. So this digital infrastructure allows, yes, connectivity and speed and all many things, but it also enables, let's say, that next level of, let's call that smart applications. So you can see it in smart buildings, smart cities. We were talking just now about Saudi. I mean, we're going to talk about different level in the next discussion with Mani. And also getting into things like preventive maintenance, safety and security. Truly, truly amazing implementation and utilization of that. But then there's almost like a transformation level as well, where certain industries are changing in a different way. And I think the world is full of amazing, encouraging, inspiring examples of what happens in education or what happens in healthcare and what is being enabled by those incredible technologies. In fact, our friends at McKinsey used to, they still do talk about the three horizons, and others do that as well. So this whole, the things that we see around us and the things that are happening everywhere enable those modernization gains, the stuff that you can get in your like immediate horizon, modernization, optimization, efficiency gains. They also enable sort of a level of, as well as transformation, where you can actually change an entire industry all the way to disruption. So there's a lot that can be done. And as I said, with those technologies, and as I said, when I asked ChatGPT, that was ChatGPT's, I just did a straightforward cut and paste. ChatGPT gave me a definition of what digital transformation is. ChatGPT gave me 8 technology trends that you may argue should they be 6, should they be 12, but they're actually quite relevant, that range from cloud computing that we talk about, that give you the advantage in scale, in speed, in security, in actually even optimization, you pay as you go, and so on, ultimate power, cheap storage, fast, very, very fast implementation that also enable things like artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not new. Between 86 and 88, when I started doing some postgraduate studies, artificial intelligence was the topic. So it's been there. I think we were thinking about it at that time more from, I think the Hollywood movies had more around what machines can do than what we were able, even as technology developers and programmers and so on, to think what we're going to do with those tools. The Internet of Things, blockchain technology, we know about Bitcoin and so on, but there's also different types of enablement. Like Web3, distributed internet. Some countries, some emerging countries don't need to wait for Microsoft or Google or Amazon to build up their own data centers. They can connect decentralized, smaller systems. There's some beautiful and incredible things, work from home or remote work. I think we're going to get to talk about that. And I can go on. Of course, challenges in cybersecurity, important jobs that are emerging in sort of like cloud architecture, cybersecurity, data science, and so on. And new connected digital ecosystems, even in the fashion industry, where I'm beginning to spend some time in, there is sort of like the brands, there's the department stores or the multi-brands, the retailers, e-tailers. I just saw a new piece of technology or a new startup that is actually trying to work that any one of us, which is more about social commerce, can be not only a brand ambassador, but can make money out of that. And again, using incredible technologies. So everything that a technology professional was dreaming of is here, is doable. In my last years in Microsoft, I was running the global team required for digital, handling complex, large digital transformation projects. We worked with a very, very large pharmaceutical company accessing 3 million years of cancer patients' data in order to expedite cancer drug discovery. We worked with a major oil and gas company to address some of the issues of clean energy and sustainability, but also to reduce the cycle from exploration to production from 29 months to 9 months. We worked with a beverage company that had smart wallets for its small mom and pop shops, not for them, but to actually distribute COVID subsidy and government help during very, very tough times. Precision agriculture in rural areas of Guatemala. There's incredible, incredible examples. But artificial intelligence, in its current shape and form, and what it's beginning to offer now, is a very, 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 very different world. It's a very different world primarily for 3 reasons. Number one, it's a technology, and here we might be referring to the machines, that can actually make decisions about itself. That's a first different point. The second thing is that it's also a technology or machines that can make decisions about humans. And that's happening now. That is actually happening now. If you submit your resume to a large company, there's probably an AI algorithm scanning the resumes. Credit applications, risk assessments in some of the top banks, and so on. So some decisions even about your investment, your wealth, your career, are beginning to be handled by machines. But the third part, which is actually the part that worries me more, and I have to say it's also very exciting, is that it keeps on getting better. Why does it keep on getting better? Because we are today putting the best human brains after that. And we are also putting the best and strongest, and may I say even the smartest machines with that. So this combination of incredible, incredible human brains and smart, fast, powerful machines that keep on getting smarter, faster, and more powerful at the same time, taking us into a zone, into a place that we really, really do not know. Truly do not know. Okay. Now, everybody talks about it. This is a very, very quick snapshot last week. So Coca-Cola, in its earnings release, said that every company needs an AI strategy. In their earnings release, there's a paragraph or a long chapter about artificial intelligence. It doesn't necessarily say what exactly they're going to do about it, but it is there for Coca-Cola. The next day, the CFO of Pepsi was asked about it, and he addressed it, and he decided to double-click on the point of responsibility. So he didn't disagree, but he added that point of responsibility. Yesterday, and I don't have the full report of that yet, there was a meeting in the White House. So the vice president of the US met with the heads of OpenAI, the company that brought up GPT, Google, Microsoft, and I think a fourth company as well, in order to talk about that. And you're in this zone where there's a lot of good things, amazing things that can come out, but we don't know at what cost. We know that there are issues with privacy. We know that there may be issues well beyond that if that technology is in the wrong hands or is used in the wrong ways, or maybe is thought to be used in the right way, but it's not. And that brings me to that sort of like my final point around that leadership perspective. And yes, leadership in many ways is about balance between so many things. I said that as a technology professional, or now I'm not a technology professional, I'm a technology enthusiast, there's no limit to that ambition. My mother, again, my late mother, whenever she wanted to sort of like pump me up and sort of like get me to accept to work hard, because my father used to push me to work hard. My mother was doing a lot of balancing there. She used to refer to an Arabic poet who was there 900 years ago. For the Arab speakers here, they may know Al-Mutanabbi. And Al-Mutanabbi had this poem where he said, إِذَا كَانَتْ النُّفُوسُ كِبَارًا تَعِبَتْ فِي مُرَادِهَا الْأَجْسَامُ. So if if you have big thoughts, big dreams, then the body will have to suffer because you have to work in order to get there. And you know what? We will have to suffer, all of us, because there is a lot of ambition, because it's almost crazy to let this power not being put in good use. But we need to make sure that we address it. And with that comes the word of responsibility. And sometimes it's ethical. So we're talking about ethics. We're talking about values. Coca-Cola and Pepsi were talking about strategy and where it goes. But the double clicks that are required there in order to go deeper and deeper and understand that and address the implications of that are very, very difficult. At some point in time, I had a case, I won't mention the name of the country. There's some smart technology that Microsoft had used that helps in identifying people, relating to them, and in many ways it's used for security. And in one of the countries I was handling, Microsoft decided not to allow this technology to be offered because they were worried about how it's going to be used. And I was offended a bit at the beginning, but then I slowly understood. But that was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Now it's just multiplied by I don't know what. Which brings me to the point of regulation. I'm not, as a person, I want freedom, I want openness. I come from a part of the world where I'd like to see less regulation and more connection, but it's required. How? What's the details? How should it be done? Where do we stop? What are the best practices? It's not there. We're all going to have to work on it. And we all have to be very careful, and we all have to be amazing advocates because, again, of the impact on people. So I spoke a bit about education. We talk about people and talent. And I know that a few years back, Jack Ma at the World Economic Forum, the Alibaba chairman or founder, spoke about the need to change from knowledge-based education, because machines are getting better than humans, to something in that knowledge base, to sort of like personal values, creativity, generation, arts. Guess what? The machines are doing that now. Which jobs are going to be affected? Irene touched on that. We really don't know. How many? What do we train? In my country, we still have people that operate the lift. Their job is to operate the lift. And it's a very, very different world. So I'm sorry for painting it a little bit on the, maybe more than a little bit on the downside, but what I want to highlight is the responsibility and the leadership. Because maybe also with your leadership, the world can really become a much better place, and women can continue to lead this new world into different heights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali. Now we've got men and machines to manage. We'll quickly move on to Mani and try to get some time in for questions. While her presentation's coming up, Mani enables the space industry to achieve its most ambitious goals through the power of the cloud. She focuses on leveraging machine learning, AI, high-performance computing, satellites and data analytics to improve every aspect of the space enterprise and mission. She works across a diverse group of public and private stakeholders and industries locally and internationally, and is a strong advocate and mentor for women in STEM. As I said, she is a rock star of space.
Good morning, ladies. I feel like I need some energy. I've been sitting too long. I promised to take you into space yesterday. I'm going to have to. You've got to help me with this. You've got to close your eyes at some point and just dream with me. How many of you, when I say space, think of a galaxy far, far away? How many of you think of Star Wars or Star Trek? How many of you dream of George Clooney being an astronaut flying with Sandra Bullock? I mean, these are the sexy things about space. This is what most people associate with space. But space is a lot more. In fact, you may not know it, but you're all using space technology in some way, shape, or form. Every time you order an Uber or a Careem in the UAE, satellites are helping position your phone to that car. Every time you complete a banking transaction on your phone, MasterCard, Amex are using validation, security validation, to make sure the person in location using the phone making that transaction is you and not from some other country trying to take money off your account. Farmers are using satellites to improve crop productivity. There's amazing medical and science health tech that's coming out, again, from being in space. So space has real-world implications for us. But more importantly, today, in the context of climate change, it plays a very vital role. What I'm going to do is take you through why space is important to climate change. My name is Manny, as I've been already introduced. Thank you, Lynn. I lead the space business, space and satellite business for Amazon Web Services across Asia Pacific. And my team and I support companies and businesses that want to exploit space as a new business model. Cloud computing, for those of you, to level set for those who aren't aware, is simply the provision of services like computing power, machine learning, storage, networking on a pay-as-you-go basis. So you can literally use a credit card and start up. If you have a business idea, it's as simple as starting up today. I'm going to explain a little bit more on the technology side, but what I want to do is leave you with 3 things in this session. First, as we've already heard, women's leadership is key to climate change, to addressing climate change. We are code red for the planet right now, given the floods, the earthquakes, the fires, and the droughts that we've seen over the last few years. The world needs all women, all hands on deck. Hold on before I get to the UA bit. Second, technology, data, and science continue to play a vital role in contributing directly to the development goals, to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the space sector is uniquely placed to progress across all these areas, especially in driving the adoption of innovative tools to inform climate-based decision-making. And third, I'd like you to join in. I'd like you to learn and become part of the change makers making a difference in this area. And I'll share with you a couple of options towards the end of my session where you can identify things that you may want to start doing. So right now, as you can see from this slide, currently there's a bit of a renaissance in space. Technology has become increasingly sophisticated. Costs have come down, which makes space more accessible. We can launch more often, launch more frequently. And as Ali said, our brain power, the smartest people on the globe, are working on this problem. So every day it becomes easier and easier for people like me and you to access space. Now, it's not just NASA or ESA that's launching rockets into space, that's launching satellites. Every government across the world, there are 77 government space agencies since 2022, including countries like Australia, Japan, India, Korea, African countries across the world are becoming involved in space because the economic reward is substantial. And right here, as you heard from Ms. Farida yesterday, right here in 2006, UAE is one of the youngest space nations. They have the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center that started out with 5 engineers in 2006. Now, Amazon Web Services work closely with these folks, and we're really proud to support them because today, MBRSC has built and launched a number of different Earth observation satellites. This is collecting information across the globe, information that helps the scientific communities, climate change groups, and research centers around the world. And guess who leads this agency? Yes, it's a young woman. Sarah Al-Armiri, who in addition to being Minister of State for Advanced Sciences, also serves as the chairwoman of the United Arab Emirates National Space Agency. Under her leadership, yeah, clap. I believe she's under 40. I haven't had the privilege to meet her, but she's a young woman doing amazing things. And under her leadership, the HOPE mission, which again, Ms. Farida mentioned yesterday, a probe was sent to Mars. So right now, there's a probe on Mars that is studying the Martian environment. This will help us learn more about our planet as it's heating up. Now, the HOPE mission is incredibly technical and complicated and all the good things that come with hard space science. But amazingly, what I found when I researched a little bit more, Sarah's team comprised 80% women. That's an incredible feat, an unusual number in the space technology world. And even more, a very high percentage of young men and women under the age of 35. To me, these are big hallmarks for Dubai, for the UAE, so cheers to them for shining the way. Now, let's take a closer look at the role of satellites. You may not be familiar with it, so I'm going to ritz through what are satellites. Satellites used to be the size of fridges, and it would take billions of dollars to launch one into orbit. Today, our technology is becoming so sophisticated, they're the size of shoeboxes. And on these shoebox-sized satellites, you have sophisticated sensors, cameras, instrumentation that can do incredible things as they map planet Earth. Today, there's hundreds of satellites floating in orbit. And what they do is they're sensing. They're literally looking at Mother Earth. They're watching her temperatures rise. They're looking at air pollution. They're looking at the polar caps melt. Essentially, these are our eyes. Satellites are our eyes looking at our planet. Satellites are also incredibly useful for early warning systems. So when there's a natural disaster or the threat of a natural disaster, scientists can typically pinpoint when something is about to happen. This means we can evacuate people ahead of floods, ahead of fires, leading to the development of emergency disaster response system. This is the thing that a lot of UN agencies are reliant on when things are starting to go pear-shaped. Here's some quick stats from our friends at the World Economic Forum on how satellites play such a critical role in measuring, mitigating, and adapting towards climate change. The key takeaway I want you to learn from this is 50% of what's known as essential climate change variables. Those are the biological, chemical, physical characteristics that scientists used to measure climate change. Those 50% of those variables can only be measured from space. So space is a crucial part in our war to see how we can deal with this calamity. Okay, so you're going to ask me, so Manny, we're collecting all this imagery, we've got all these maps, what does that actually mean? How does that translate into data? Okay, so this is where cloud computing or software comes in. It's essentially data science. Space is space data, and space data is data science. This is familiar for those of you who deal with data on an everyday basis. Today, we've reached a point where it's nearly impossible to store all this data that we're collecting as these satellites are taking these photographs and mapping Earth. So this is where tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science come in. So my team and I, what we do, we don't go into space, we'd love to do that, but we do the groundwork, which is we pick up these images and we look at them and we dive into it for detail, for insights that's going to help farmers, for insights that's going to help policy officials decide what to do for a certain area that's prone to drought or prone to flooding. How do you do urban planning? How do you measure the energy efficiency of a building? These are all things that we can do with space data. Now, Irene always says to me, Manny, what does this mean for the women in the room? Talk to me about how this is going to make a difference to them. So what I want to do is I want to show you, and these are just some of the services. These are services or software pieces. They're like building blocks that we use to build solutions. And I want to show you how I've worked with 4 or 5 companies, regular guys and girls, regular men and women who have never been into space, do not know the first thing about being an astronaut, who have built space business models that serve citizens on Earth. So let's go. Let me show you a few so you get inspired and maybe you come up with some new, because this is like the apps world. There's so much that you can build and develop. So in Australia, This is a company called Fireball. Record-breaking temperatures and months of severe drought a few years ago fueled a series of fires across Australia, I think it was in 2020, causing massive loss of life and damage that takes billions of dollars to recover. What this company did is they picked up satellite imaging and they used ground sensors. So it's satellite imaging, IoT sensors on the ground, and machine learning algorithms that can actually learn to detect when a fire is about to occur. So the conditions for a fire load, you think about biomass, and there's a lot of science involved here, but it's technology and science combined together to come up with an alert system 3 minutes as soon as there's smoke or smoke signals. The company is able to issue an alert to the fire department to start evacuation process if it's serious, or just tamp down the fire. So I think it's an incredible application of space data, making life on Earth useful, just adding benefits to global society. Second example, this company has built a solution, 28,000 farms, and we're basically mapping 35 million acres of farmland to provide digital solutions that empower farmers to react to changes in crops. So the satellite imagery is so sophisticated, it can detect crop moisture. It can detect crop maturity. It can tell when there's too much pesticide in the soil. And these sensors are hyperspectral, so they're color-coded. Every time you take a snapshot of the ground, you see them in red, yellow, green. It might look like beautiful artwork to some of us, but it actually means something. So farmers are actually able to use this information on their mobile phone or an iPad device to control crop productivity, to make their farms more profitable, while at the same time looking after their farmland environment. Another company we work with is a London-based company called Satellite View. They produce high-resolution thermal imagery to monitor the temperature of every building on the planet. Effectively, I can describe them as a thermometer of the world. That's what they're aiming to do. And what they do is give us the energy efficiency and the carbon footprint of every building that we want them to map. So Irene mentioned this yesterday, not all companies are upfront about the actual impact that they're making, but we have ways to measure this. Again, a very tangible and necessary innovation that's as a direct result of space technology. Similar to data farming, there's a company in India called Satshore. I'm highlighting all these examples because I want you to understand they come from all over the world. These companies are new. They're 3 or 4 years old. They did not exist before. It's only now because the confluence of technology, lowering cost, the ability for people to access space has become more and more easy. So this company, again, combination of weather data, agricultural farm footprints, economic data sets, that is helping farmers in India and others to generate timely, location-specific, actionable insights into the agriculture sector. Finally, last example, this is a not-for-profit that we work with. It's called Digital Earth Africa. Amazon has basically created a we call them digital twins. So there's an entire continent of Africa. There's a digital version of it. And the insights that we produce from the data that we map help officials from Ghana to Tanzania to Nigeria tackle illegal mining. We can detect when flooding is about to happen. If there's a drought in country, we can direct food and other aid into those areas. So again, space technology, but with a very real benefit to everyone who's living on Earth. So why am I telling you all this? Well, the point of this whole summit, I always think, is we need to be able to enable more women and girls to play an equal and active role, not just in space science and technology, but in innovation and exploration. And I don't mean exploration of space, I just mean exploration of business models that provide you with a livelihood while making a positive impact to the planet that we live in. From policymaking and advocacy to building and using solutions that accelerate us to net zero. So I've got two two offers for you, and you can pick up and we can have a conversation afterwards if you wanted to. If you can imagine playing a role, Amazon Web Services have created a program called She Builds. It's an online learning program that aims to inspire and encourage professional women to consider a career in the technology industry. It's completely free. It's an 8-week program. When I started at Amazon 5 years ago, I did not know a thing about cloud. If I can do it, you can do it. And it basically provides a supportive environment to study while building confidence, networks, all of that sort of stuff. So since 2022, over 70,000 women across the world have registered for this program. I encourage you to take a look at it. And the second offering is Amazon and the US Agency for International Development have launched a public-private partnership to address the gender inequalities that exist for women in the climate finance ecosystem, to support female entrepreneurs with the resources that they need to accelerate climate change solutions. So if this is of interest, again, come have a chat with me afterwards or take a look at the link that I've offered up there. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your questions in the thing.
Thanks, Manny. I'm just fascinated by the complexity of your work and the simplicity in how you deliver. The She Starts program, I saw a lot of phones up taking photos, which is fantastic. We have really gone to time, so I'm not going to go to questions, but our panellists will be around if you want to approach them during the course of the day. So please help work with me in thanking Sonia, Ali, Manny and Andre. Thank you.